All right, we're just going to walk quickly through a couple additional tools in ArcGIS Pro that might be helpful for your final project. We've talked about these as people were presenting their ideas for their final project. These are buffers, heat maps, and spatial joins are the three that I'm going to walk through in this video. You can see that the outline of Rochester is up. I'm using my Rochester map, and we're going to do most of these things based on school buildings. We're going to use school buildings. School buildings are one of many things that I'm going to show on a map using dots on a map. And so we're talking education tonight. I thought school buildings might be a helpful thing to use. But if you are not looking at schools, but looking at grocery stores or brownfield sites, or just about anything else that can appear as a dot on a map, you would follow the exact same steps. Instead of talking about schools, you'd be talking about the points that you're dealing with. So all of these tools are especially helpful with points. Some of them can be used with any kind of shape, but these are particularly helpful with points. So schools, we want to find schools. You could go generate a full list of addresses using Google by searching for Google or Googling schools. You could possibly find a shapefile on the web, download it, and bring it into your map. We're going to cheat and just go straight to Living Atlas when it comes to schools. So here I'm at Living Atlas right here. I've add data. One of my choices right down here is Living Atlas, and that immediately connects me to all the things that are already posted online that people are willing to share. You can search instead of going through by hand. You can ask it to search for you. And so here's all this long list of schools that popped up. I'm going to pick these because for this example, I'm curious about public schools, and you can see the kind of thing that appears. So Living Atlas, you never know which geographies you're going to get through Living Atlas, which is why it's always good to test. But here are public schools at least as far-reaching as Monroe County, likely across the entire United States, which is way more than I care about. I really just want public schools within the city of Rochester. And so before we even use our new tools, as a quick reminder of tools you already know, if I don't want to be dealing with school buildings across the entire United States, I just want school buildings that happen to be within the city of Rochester. You can see I've got the boundary that is Rochester in my map already. I'm going to use this selection tool, select by location, to tell my map, listen, can you please just select those schools that have their center somewhere within the city of Rochester. And so it's already guessed, since this one's highlighted here, this has already popped up at the top. I want all those schools that have their center in the city of Rochester. Here's my, again, you've used this tool before. This is not a new one, but just as a reminder of ways you can use these different tools you know about to be real helpful. So there are all the school buildings in Rochester. They've been selected. If I right click over here, selection, make a layer for my selected features, and I can click off of this one. Again, just so we're not distracted, they've given me this cute little icon of the school building. I don't care about that. Here, I've got this one right here. My symbology is already up. If it wasn't, I could right click and get symbology. There it is up here again. It was already up, but just to remind you how you get to this spot and say, listen, I just want points. All right, so there are all my points on the map. Just so it's easier to see, reminder, you can switch over to properties. Let's make these a little bit smaller so you can see what we're doing with our buffers, which we can do first. So there are all my school buildings. Say I wanted to know which neighborhoods or which houses or which blocks or which grocery stores were within a certain distance of these schools. One nice thing, one quick, easy thing to do would be to create a buffer around each of these points. So all those dots on the map are a school building, but what if I want to know the stuff that's within a quarter mile of any of those dots? If you scan through all these, we've got all these different tools up here. You know, your menu bar changes as you keep clicking on things. If you go to analysis, a bunch of these tools are going to pop up here, and they now all have these very pretty icons to tell you what it is you're looking at. Very first one up at the top is buffer. If you don't see it, you can scroll through these tools using these up and down arrows. The very first one is right up here. Just to keep things simple, all I'm going to do here is schools in Rochester, so we have a clear idea of what on earth it is we're talking about. All right, so I'm going to go to buffers. And here's the sort of window that pops up to walk you through buffers. If you're not sure what on earth you're supposed to put in any individual rectangle here, this information button, all you have to do is sort of hover on top of it with your mouse. It can tell you, maybe give you a little bit of a hint as to what it is. But this is the thing that we want to draw a buffer around. So if I pull down this drop down, there are my schools. I want to do a drop down menu. The sort of automatic title that it comes up with is Schools in Rochester Buffer. I'm fine with that. If you want to change the name, you have a chance to enter it right here, figure out where you want to save it, and also change the name, can go right in here. And then these windows is how you determine how big you're drawing these buffers. So you can pick any kind of distance you want. You can measure in miles, you can measure in feet or inches. We're going to measure in miles for this case, but you could have just as easily said, listen, I just want to know whatever is in 500 feet of these points that I have on my map. I'm going to do a quarter mile. No rhyme or reason. I could do 1 mile, I could do 6 miles, I could do a half mile. Anything you want to do, you can easily enter it into here. So I've got my schools. There are my points on the map. I'm going to put those in here. This is what's going to get spit out. That is the name of the file that will be my buffers. And my buffers are going to be a quarter mile circles around each one of these dots. And so if I click on run down here, it's going to generate those buffers. And there they are. And so if I just click off my schools for a second, what I've got are these bigger circles. Those are the areas that are within a quarter mile of any school building in Rochester. Again, you may find that helpful because then you know which areas are within that distance. Or you may want to know, here I got grocery stores. I want to show on my map all those areas that are in a half mile of these grocery stores. Or I've got brownfield sites and I want to show the geographic areas that are all within a mile of these brownfield sites. And so buffers are a great way that you can quickly draw those expanded boundaries. The other thing to show you, it's not possibly as applicable with schools as it might be with things like brownfield sites or grocery stores, is to show you the heat map tool. Super easy. The only thing you need to know about the heat map tool is you need to have points. If I had an indicator like this is my old percent valued below $100,000 shape. So this one, just to plunk that back up on the map, that looks like that one. That can't make a heat map with polygons, sort of shapes and rectangles. But if you have points, you can make a heat map from points. And so schools are one of my points. All you have to do, we're going to go straight back to symbology. Just right click to go to symbology. And just like we've been playing around with in these different choices, many people have used graduated colors, for example, as you did your poverty rates or your various characteristics that you found in the census to map. One of the choices as you scroll down is a heat map. If I click on heat map, what it's going to automatically do for me is create a heat map based on the proximity of those dots to one another. I can change how sensitive my heat map is. I can, and so there it just sort of zoomed in a little bit on where those dots are on a map. I can change the color if I want to. And so you can play around with that. But it's now transformed my dots into a heat map, which again might be really helpful for you if you're looking at something like grocery stores or environmentally contaminated sites or something like that, where you want not just dots on the map, but you want a way to show sort of where those dots are concentrated. My dots haven't disappeared. They now instead appear as a heat map. So if I want to see them again as dots, I can just go back and sort of undo this heat map, get them back to single symbols. And so I'm going to do that for now. And so now I've got my dots again. But that's the easy way to do a heat map. I could have also, I'm going to right click, I'm going to copy. I go back to my map tab here, I can paste. And so now I have two. If you look over here, I'm dragging them so they're one on top of the other. Now I have two schools in Rochester choices. And so what I could do is make one a heat map. I'm going to go back to symbology and make one a heat map. Beautiful, that's just the way I wanted. And then I'm just going to click this off so I can look at my dots. But now whenever I want to see my heat map or export my heat map or layer my heat map on top of something else, I've got it right here. All right. Now, the only other thing I want to do is spatial join, which is a really powerful tool. Right now, I just have these list of schools, and let me show you. I'm going to open the attribute table so you can see the kind of information I've got. Here's the thing I know about these schools. And so if they've got a special school identification number, much like the GeoID, I've got the names of these schools. This is the state that they're in. I've got the addresses. I could, or you could, go to greatschools.com or any other website, including, the New York State Department of Education, to find out information about any of these schools. I could join a data table that I put together, so long as I have one of these, some identifier in both tables, I can join those two tables together. And then instead of seeing a whole bunch of purple dots on my map, I could shade these dots based on some other characteristic about these schools. Another thing I might want to know, though, is which schools are in which census tracts, for example. I've got a whole bunch of information about my census tracts. For example, I know how many have a lot of lower value housing. I know what the median value is in my census tracts in Rochester. And I want to know which schools are in which neighborhoods with certain characteristics. And so the spatial join can do that for you. It's effectively the same kind of bringing together of a data table and a shapefile. Well, now we're just bringing together two shapefiles. So for example, I'm going to bring up here, we got median value. So now you see we got a whole bunch of dots on my map, and the shapes show what median value looks like. You can see the ranges right here. Well, I want to know which schools are in neighborhoods with these different median values. I could look one by one, but the rule is that you should never be going through things one by one. You should make the computer do all the work for you. And so the way you can do that is through a spatial join. I'm going to say, listen, link up these schools to my census tracts, and then I'm going to know the median value that is in the neighborhood surrounding each one of these schools. All right, so if you remembered over here at analysis, we've got all these choices. And again, if you don't see it, you can scroll up and down. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do in here, but buffers is one thing we just did. And now spatial join is another thing we can do. It is such a popular tool that if you right click here, when you were going to joins and relates, we added a join, we brought in a table. Spatial join is even right here on this main menu. So I'll click it here, but you'd get to the same place whether you use it from the menu bar up top or whether you use that one. All right, so this should look kind of familiar because the spatial join looks a lot like the join window. So we've got our schools up here. And this is what they're going to spit it out to call it. I'm going to change this name because I'm going to connect it to median value. In my code, that's what means median value. That'll mean something to me. So I want to put my schools, and I want to join my schools based on my median value, which I'm going to pick this City of Rochester census tracts. The reason I'm picking it is because it's right over here, City of Rochester census tracts. So just again, in case you couldn't see my mouse before, here's the City of Rochester census tracts. It's this shapefile right here, City of Rochester census tracts. One-to-one, I want to match. These are dots. These are points on a map. So I want to map it based on which census tract it falls within. So again, these windows are not totally super helpful because they don't go exactly in logical order, but here's what I've effectively told it. Join my schools to census tracts based on whichever census tract a school falls within. So if a school is within a census tract, connect those two things together. That makes sense. Here's the thing that's getting joined to this one, and how the computer will know which census tract to join which school to. If the school falls within a census tract, they're going to join it together. It's based not on a GeoID, it's based on the location. So if the geography of the school is somewhere within a census tract, that's how the map will know to join these two things together. So we're going to say, okay, it's going to run its join, and it didn't look like much happened. I'm going to click some of these things off. We're going to click this off again so we can see our dots. And we're going to scroll all the way up to the top here. Here's actually the one that matters. We're going to click that guy off too. So again, these don't look very interesting. They look just like the other school dots, but what is true here, if we open up this attribute table, just like when you opened up your attribute table after joining your census data into your shapefile, if we scroll over here, we're going to scroll all the way over in our table. So there's all of our school data. But if we go far over, more, sorry, it's all the way at the end here. There is our information about the median value. So now I know which school is in which census tract that has which median value. And so now maybe I want to see these dots, not as a heat map, but maybe I want to look at schools based on the median value of the neighborhood they're in. So here we go. We got this. We're going to do graduated colors. And now the thing we want to do is my median value. Looks a little weird because you only have 2 of these. Let's instead have 5 different groups. And you can start to see which of these schools landed in census tracts with which of these median values. May be helpful to do, maybe not, but it's a great way to connect neighborhood data to points, points to neighborhood data. It's a join that's based on the geography where things are. So now I know which schools are in which neighborhoods that have particular median values. And if I also know something about these schools, I may be able to see whether there's any kind of connection between the median value in the neighborhood surrounding these schools and school performance, or the number of kids that are in a particular classroom with a single teacher, that kind of thing. It could be a really helpful way to go back and forth between the points and the polygons. That makes any sense, the schools and the neighborhoods. Now I can look at that information together. We will go over this more in person. I'm happy to walk through all of this again, but now you've seen at least the ways you can think about using and how to use these tools. You can see them right up here. We used buffers. We just did a spatial join. And when you're dealing with dots like schools or grocery stores or brownfield sites, one of your choices in symbology, if we scroll all the way down, is heat map. So any of those, none of those might be helpful to use. You're working on your final project, but just a few additional tools in ArcGIS Pro that might be really helpful for you.